All right, here we go. Yes, we're live now. Welcome to the January Hangout for co-hosts and supporters. And so, yes, for a second there, we had Daniel Wilcox, but he seems to be gone now. Also joining us is Alex and little ɪᴛᴄᴏɪR. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing pretty well. This guy is all full of energy right now. It's going to be difficult to keep him keep him calm.
They're like that. How old is he now?
He is, let's see, that would be 8 months? Yeah, just over 8 months.
So is he crawling?
Yeah, he's crawling all over. He's crawling like a pro now.
Is he climbing? That's the thing you got to watch out for.
It's not so much climbing. He's definitely pulling himself up into a standing position all the time. And we recently had to lower the level of his crib so that he wouldn't flip over the railing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you subscribe to Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut?
I do not. I hadn't heard of that one.
Yeah, he's getting pretty popular this year. He recently did a Denver Hangout, so we got to go see him. I got a picture of Elon with Tim Dodd. He got a kick out of that. Tim Dodd did that. He got to meet an Elon at his Hangout.
Yeah, send me a link to that. I'll make sure it's in the show notes in the description.
Sure. Will do. Let's see. So what's going on with the? I guess there was some miscommunication between us on the Thunderfoot video.
Oh, I just sent you a message earlier today because I still haven't got your audio for that.
Yeah, I sent in my sent folder. It says I sent you a link to the Dropbox file, and I recorded that on New Year's Eve. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I had sent that. I don't know if that got misdirected into your spam folder because it contained a link or something, but
it might have, but we can sort it out after the live stream's over. But yeah, finally this collaboration between the two of us on this latest Thunderfoot deal will get done. I think people are going to like what we've come up with. I'm not going to give anything away, but it's kind of funny.
Well, that mesmerized him. He was trying to press the space bar, but then I put my video full screen, and he's just staring at himself now.
Aw. All right, so Bunnyism Philosophy is in the chat room and says, what do you think of the whole McAfee deal? I'm not sure. Is he in the news again lately? I'm not sure I've heard this.
I haven't heard anything about that. Let's see.
Yeah.
Where's the chat?
You have to go to like the video page and.
Oh, like the YouTube page?
Yeah.
I'm just in the Google Hangouts page. And
yes. That's only a chat room between the participants, not members of the public.
Yeah, I think this Patreon debacle hit us hard. Did you lose a lot of
I lost a lot. I got set back money-wise. I got, the amount I'm getting per month. I got set back to where I was in like September of 2017.
Ooh.
Now this last month, I've gotten back on Subscribestar since they.
Right. I just signed up just so that I could, I wanted to continue to support you, but again, I just signed up for that as soon as I saw your Hangout.
Yeah, I appreciate
I got to get on that.
Yeah, and I switched over to the Discord today because before the supporter Discord was just like its own Discord server, and so I was kind of talking with them the other day. It was like, you know what? Would it be better if we kind of merged it all into the Bogosity Discord at discord.bogosity.tv? And they were fine with that. So I did that today. And apparently I screwed up a bunch of stuff and even the co-hosts lost access to it. But I think it's all working now. But if anyone's having difficulty with that, let me know and we'll get it fixed up.
Okay, hold on just a second. I'm going to put it in a swing.
Why is it that the techiest guys like me are also the easiest at breaking things? I don't know why that is.
Hey, buddy, it's okay. It's okay. You like the swing. Come on. There you go. Yeah, that's good. Hey. There you go.
Oh, not happy.
He's not happy. Maybe if I give him a rhombic octahedron to play with.
Ah.
Yeah, he likes those. My wife always calls it a ball. I'm all like, no, it's not a ball. It's a rhombic octahedron.
It's going to be a while before he's saying that one. I think ball might be easier to teach him.
But we say rhombic octahedron now exclusively. She just stopped saying ball. So, and I always make sure. Anymore. I would love it if he said rhombic octahedron before he says ball.
But Daddy, it's not a regular polygon.
It's a polyhedron. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny when you're hanging out on these really geeky mathy types online, talking about whether you can have a proper regular polygon of more than 20 sides. And people have pointed to like all these like 30-sided, 120-sided, and other people say that doesn't count for some reason. And
well, they're not Platonic solids because they're not because of the definition of Platonic solids. There's only 5 Platonic solids, but there are a lot of highly symmetrical or what's called face transitive polyhedra that are different. For example, like what's it called? I'm forgetting the name of one of them. There's a whole class of them. They're called Catalan solids. Catalan solids are really highly symmetrical. They make great dice, and they're face transitive. The rhombic.
You might have to explain some of these terms for our audience.
Yeah. So the one I have in mind right now is the rhombic dodecahedron. It's a 12-sided polyhedra. Each face is a rhombus, and each face is, they're all every face.
So kind of like a diamond. So kind of like a diamond shape.
Yeah. Yeah, diamond shape, not a square rhombus. You know, and hey, hold on, just one sec.
Trying to explain mathematical concepts and deal with a baby. Yes.
Okay, gave him something to put in his mouth. Face transitive means that you could take one face and you could rotate the polyhedron so that that face is in the place of any other face, and it'll perfectly match up. You know, so you can't distinguish between faces in a sense. And the Catalan solids, there's like, I don't know, 20 or 30 of those. They're all face transitive.
Unlike the polyhedron that you just had, some of the squares were faces and some were triangles.
Yeah, I believe that one's the rhombic octahedron is not face transitive, obviously, for that reason, but I believe it is what's called it's one of those Greek philosophers, mathematicians, Aristotle or Socrates or something. They you know, there's the Platonic solids, which are the ones that most people are familiar with, the tetrahedron and the cube and the octahedron, etc. But there's another class, Archimedean solids, I think they are. I think that's what he was playing with was.
So is the only
the Archimedean solids.
Is the only distinction with the Platonic solids just that I don't know, they were discovered first, or what? What's the distinction there?
The Platonic solids have a definition that all of the faces must be regular polygons. So the polygons must have equal length sides and equal angles on all of their angles.
So a rhombus with a diamond shape wouldn't count even if it's symmetrical.
Right, because the angles are different on, or they're the same on opposite corners, but different on adjacent corners. But the other definition of the Platonic solids is that each vertex has to have the same number of faces coming to that vertex. So you could have, so that you've got three different Platonic solids made out of triangles. One where three triangles come to each vertex, and that's the tetrahedron. The next step up would be if four triangles came to the same vertex, and that would create the octahedron. And then if five triangles come to each vertex, meet at each vertex, then that creates an icosahedron. If you were to try to do this with six triangles, well, 6 times 60 degrees is 360, so you can have a tiling of where each point 6 triangles are meeting at, but that's just a plane, so it doesn't create a convex solid. So that's why there's only 3 triangular Platonic solids. And similarly, if you try to do it with squares, well, you can make 3 squares come together at each vertex, and that's a cube. And you can do the same with pentagons. But if you tried to have 4 squares come together, that creates a plane. And obviously, you can't do 4 or more pentagons coming together. So that's why there's only 5 Platonic solids. I was going to mention that the Archimedean solids, which include the rhombic-cube octahedron that I showed, their duals are the Catalan solids. And all of the Catalan solids have face transitive faces. And a dual is it's very difficult to describe verbally, but it's like if you truncate the vertexes of a polyhedron, that is, you cut off the corners, but you could aggressively cut them off more and more. If you truncate them all the way down to the extreme, it becomes the other shape. A square or a cube, once you start truncating the cube, and a truncated cube is actually one of the Archimedean solids, but if you truncated a cube all the way until the new vertices met halfway along the edges of that cube, then you would get the octahedron. So the dual of the cube is the octahedron. The dual of the icosahedron is the dodecahedron, another Platonic solid, and the dual of any Archimedean solid is a Catalan solid. The dual of the tetrahedron is just itself, actually.
Cool. Well, Innocuous Remark wants us to change the subject badly enough to pay $10, and he says, "Hey Shane, sorry to bring up such a serious subject, but I've been wondering about your ideas on this for a while." Yeah, as cute as the baby is, you might want to mute the mic there.
Yeah.
Okay, been wondering about your ideas on this for a while. Is sale of CP against the NAP or not? I'm hoping you can tell me it is somehow. And I don't know what he means by CP, so I've asked in the chat room and haven't gotten a response yet. But when he does,
I think I know what that means. I hope nobody makes any judgments, because I think I know what this means. I believe he's referring to child pornography. So,
hello,
yeah.
Hoplu.
Hello.
Well, yeah, if that's the case, I actually made a couple of quickies on this, and I kind of agree with what the Supreme Court here in the United States said. If there's not an actual child involved, then it should be fine. No victim, no crime. Now, of course, if you're abusing a child to do this, then you're a scumbag and you should be thrown in a deep dark hole for a very long time.
Yeah.
But that would be the difference.
Yeah, that's how I see it too.
What'd I miss?
Child porn.
Yeah, the situation becomes really dicey and hairy on all the situations in between. For example, say somebody produces child pornography, which is obviously a horrendous thing to do, but then it gets distributed online whether, by third parties who weren't involved in the production. At what point is their involvement, considered a violation of the NAP, or discourageable sufficiently? There's a sufficient.
This is an interesting aspect of it, because when he's specifically talking about sale of child porn, I'm assuming that means where you're actually paying money for it, and of course that creates an economic demand for more of it to be produced. But if it's not being sold, if it's just being distributed for free on the Pirate Bay or wherever, I know the Pirate Bay doesn't allow that, but just as an example, supposedly what we keep being told is that piracy destroys the market for it. So shouldn't you want it in that case, so that you destroy the market and no more is being produced? But of course, we know it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of unintended consequences to whichever policy that you implement. A real interesting thought experiment is, do you have the right to sell your own child pornography? Like, let's say I had pictures of myself from when I was a little kid. Should I be allowed to sell those to other people?
Well, and we've seen cases where, teenagers have taken nude photos of themselves and just handed on their phone and been charged with possession of child pornography.
Yeah, that's
obviously the law has been grossly abused in many cases, and you would think that it would make sense to write an exception into the law where a minor cannot be charged with that crime.
Is that little ɪᴛᴄᴏɪR here?
Yeah, that's little Elon.
Yeah. But as soon as you do that, as soon as you even propose it, everyone who's on the opposite side of the aisle from you is going to say, oh, you want porn of 4-year-olds and you agree with child rape and everything else. And it's just, it's not a political battle anyone is going to bring up.
Right. It makes absolute perfect sense. It should be the most obvious law ever. You can't charge a minor with possession of child pornography simply for having pictures of themselves. Obviously, everybody with a brain would agree with that, but nobody wants to even propose that as legislation, because then it's going to be used in smear campaigns and just really destroy a person's reputation, and will be completely taken out of context. And yeah.
Oh, I've been blocked from forums and Facebook sites and stuff just for discussing this and saying, well, hey, there's some issues here. So where's a better place to draw the line? And, is there a better way of doing it than, it's legal if you're 18, but illegal if you're 17 and 364 days and stuff like that. And then people yell at me, call me a child rapist and block me and everything. And I think it's a problem if we can't even have a conversation about it.
Right. Yeah, that is a big problem. Absolutely. Totally agree.
Daniel, I don't think you've weighed in on this. I know you missed the first part, but what's your opinion? Are you there? I think he's been having technical difficulties all evening, so...
Maybe he's smart enough to not open his mouth on the subject.
He's smarter than we are. That's what's going on.
That is.
Yeah, so apparently we have Donald Trump in the chat room, so hopefully we'll educate him on a few things. Right above him, I see Scorch88. I got to give him a shout out because he was my very first supporter on Subscribestar, and he also helped me kind of debug the Subscribestar Discord link up, and I'm very grateful for that, both for the support and for helping out like that. So Jeffrey Fry, yeah, what a time to come into the middle of a live stream and see us talking about that. So what you been up to, Hoplu?
I've just been working on my new video. I'm not gonna say what the topic is because spoilers. But it's actually way ahead of schedule. It should be done by the end of the month, which is perfect because I said on my new podcast, the Plague Cast, which is something I do every Thursdays, 12 o'clock Pacific time. So for Shane, that should be about 3. Yeah, 3. And
okay. I've got to go take my son to martial arts, but I will be back in probably 15 minutes.
8 months old and doing martial arts, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, he can't hear me. I'm assuming it's his other son that he's taking to martial arts.
Yeah.
Like a little 8-month-old Elon doing martial arts. Yeah.
Oh, that's a sight to behold, I tell you what. But anyways, I said on my new podcast, The Plague Cast, that I'm gonna be uploading animated videos monthly. Reason why is obvious, because they take so long and they take a lot of effort and energy, and can't exactly keep up with the one every other week pace. So I've decided to say, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna put out higher quality videos every month or so. And
how long does it take you to animate like a 5-minute video?
I generally get about 30 seconds of footage made a day. Like that's my goal. And sometimes I don't always get those 30 seconds. Sometimes I do more than those 30 seconds, but it's generally one of those, unless I want to be all day, every day, doing absolutely nothing but that, no other projects, no hanging out with my family, no going outside, then I'm just decided, yeah, you know what, I think that a better usage of my time is gonna be a monthly release schedule. Which, if you actually look at like the larger storytime channels, like the animated storytime videos, which rake in millions of views, stuff like Jaden Animations and The Odds One Out, they post about at that rate, and they're doing pretty well. So, yeah. But
yeah, it's real easy to get caught in like this thing, like my space station animation that has all those logos on the side. I was wanting to update that, and instead of using this ancient version of 3D Studio, which I didn't even reinstall when I put in my new system, I'm like, okay, I'll pull the models and everything over to Blender, and so I'll get the textures over. And then I decided, well, I'm going to redo the textures and make them better off. And hey, I think I'll download Blender 2.8 and try it in Eevee. And so that's what I've been doing for like 3 days. What I was figuring that would be like a few hours is taking 3 days.
Oh goodness, I know exactly how that goes. It's one of those, I just can't get it perfect, where I can do it so much better than this kinds of thing, and it ends up taking so much longer than you intended.
Yeah, but, it's amazing. Eevee has some really annoying limitations because it's a game engine and not a photorealistic engine like Cycles, where you can, like, my other stuff was done in Cycles. I mean, it really just looks like you're there. So, but the difference is I can render a frame of 4K video in 3 seconds as opposed to 45. So,
oh yeah, I actually used to use Blender like a lot. I made some really, like, on my look back live stream, I've actually shown like some of my old Blender projects, which I've actually made public, if anyone is wondering. But
cool.
I used to make a lot of like really weird little animations on Blender, and I decided, actually, why did I decide to move to more two-dimensional stuff? Like, I kind of think I'm not in a sort of, oh, I regret this decision. I'm just trying to think to myself, why did I move?
Check out 2.8 and some of the stuff they're doing with the new grease pencil, because I mean, it is just like 2D animation in a 3D environment.
Oh yeah, I actually used to try out the sort of put it in what's that camera mode, orthographic.
Yeah,
orthographic. I used to do that. Put it 0 degrees on the floor and then just do two-dimensional animations in Blender. Yeah, I know how that works.
Yeah, but apparently this new grease pencil in the 2.8 beta, I've only just kind of played around with it a little bit, but I've watched like some of the tutorials and examples on it, and like, oh, it is just amazing. People are just doing drawing tablets and doing the animations on it, and they've actually produced a short film with just the 2D grease pencil animation.
Is there any particular hardware that you would recommend for doing 2D animation?
I generally like I have a AMD 580 and an i7 770K. Or no, not
Yeah,
so.
but I mean in terms of like tablets. Or
Oh,
like a
tablets!
Wacom
I
tablet.
actually have one of those. I actually have a cheap knockoff tablet called XP Pen. Like not one of
Okay.
their professional tablets, just one of their really cheap ones. Don't know what the brand or what this one is called itself, but just about.
Yeah, I
Just
got a cheap Aldi brand years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what the brand name is, but it does not work at all under Windows 10. And
What
oh,
they
was that
haven't
other one?
updated the drivers in like 15 years or something like that. So I got to get a new one.
yeah.
What was that other
Oh,
one you mentioned? X10?
XP Pen.
XP Pen.
But just really just about any tablet with like at the very least pressure, what's it called?
Pressure
Pressure
sensitive
sensitivity.
and
That's what it's
angle sensitivity is good too.
Oh yeah, that's definitely something. Actually, I don't think my tablet has that. Shoot. But you just got to remember it's not like your hardware is only something that makes it easier. It doesn't make things it's not what carries your entire drawings. Like that's just the thing you got to remember when animation.
But good hardware can make it less frustrating, and
Oh,
frustration
definitely.
can really kill the creativity.
Oh, definitely. Like I'd say that I absolutely agree. Like that's what I said. I said it definitely makes it easier, just doesn't carry it, you know.
Angry
Yeah,
Froman says in the chat, I'm learning Blender myself, Shane, not much progress, but I'm making a 3D model of my avatar. If you haven't checked it out yet, check out the Blender Guru channel.
Oh yeah.
And it's really, really good stuff there. Although at this point, he's only made like a couple of videos in the last few months because he's waiting for the release of 2.8. So
Yeah. Yeah, I need to learn Blender again. I can make a bunch of like backgrounds and more advanced scenarios in Blender than I can with 2D.
oh yeah, and you can easily put the two together. You know,
Oh,
I
yeah.
did some of that with the Libertune stuff.
Oh yeah. Like
So
especially
innocuous remark, another $10 from innocuous remark. Thanks for answering my awful question. No, it's a good question. It's something people need to have a conversation about. Like I said, what's a NAP-friendly way of handling externalities such as air and noise pollution? I'm confused about how property borders apply in such cases. Thanks again. Well, I mean, if it intrudes on your ability to use your property, so I mean, if they're like burning tires and the smoke is blowing over onto your property, then yeah, that's something that's actionable. And same with noise pollution if it's just, you know, so loud.
How about something that affects literally the entire world, like CO2 emissions?
That's a little bit of a stickier situation, but you know, I think there are, you know, various different solutions because I mean, this is something that clearly a lot of people are concerned about. And I mean, I don't claim to have all of the solutions.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Just regarding the philosophical side in favor of an economic approach, I think that the straightforward approach would be to tax carbon emissions.
Well,
Certainly, that's
the
a better.
problem with that. The problem with that is it's called the Pigovian tax, Pigouvian, I think, and look up all the problems with that. I think if you're going to do something like that, a governmental solution or something like that, the better thing to do would be, instead of a carbon tax or a carbon credits, something where people, you know, all over the country are directly compensated. However much money you get from them goes directly to, you know, the property owners in proportion, you know, to their property values or something like that, so that you can actually get the proper incentives going.
One thing I would like to point out on the topic of externalities, though, is that Walter Block made like a special thing to point out in this discussion, and that is the question of who was there first. Like, say, if someone builds a house one day, and then the next day someone comes in with a tire burning station and the smoke blows over, that's obviously hey, you got to stop doing that. You're hurting my property. But if the tire burning the tire burners were there first, and someone decides to build their house in the smog, they don't have the right to call them out on that because they were not there first.
Right, because that's the state of the property, you know,
Yeah.
as they were there. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's one of those common law things. Which, by the way, a thing about another thing that people like Walter Block and Murray Rothbard pointed out is that back in the days of, like, say, the Industrial Revolution, it was a sort of common law thing where if, like, factories were blowing smog onto your property, getting your laundry dirty because, you know, you hung them out to dry. But if smog were to blow on your property, it was a common law thing for you to be able to sue those factories. But eventually, during the Industrial Revolution, the U.S. government decided, no, we're not gonna prosecute these factories for polluting your property because we want the industrialization. We want to prioritize the industrial sector by letting them slide when it comes to damaging your property, so that we can beat out Great Britain and Europe and foreign competitors to our business cronies, etc., etc.
Well, I think Britain actually did that first, by letting all the factories go up in London. And there was this thing that the American courts kept doing because, technically the British courts aren't precedents in American courts, but the courts were going, hey, there's this decision over in the British court ruled this way. We should rule that way too. And it's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, these are the guys we sent packing in 1776.
Oh yeah. Like, I think that, you can say, okay, maybe Rothbard wasn't perfect on anything, but I'd say one of the best things about him was just him digging through history and pulling out, a whole bunch of interesting stuff. Like how Benjamin Franklin supposedly favored a paper money fiat system because his printing press was the one who would be contracted to print said money.
Well, it was the same thing with the post office, wasn't it?
Yep.
He was figuring he'd be the one to run the post office.
Oh yeah, and that's one of those kinds of. That's one of my favorite parts of Rothbard. It's just
okay.
amazing.
So innocuous remark follows up. Where do you draw the line? Even a small wood fire can have an impact on air quality. Well, and I think the thing is, first of all, you have to think of it in terms of, if you go to court in front of a jury, or if it's in Kapistan, you go in front of a DDRO, what are you going to be able to convince them to do? And if it's a thing where it's just normal for society for people in winter to light fires to help warm their house or whatever, and the smoke comes from that, and that's a common thing, then, that's something you should expect, when you buy the property there. So, I get you just think about it from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just because something is common, I think it should be. There is something to be said about what you can expect, but also, it should just be proportional, to the damage that's actually caused too. Regardless of how common it is.
True, yeah.
It is creating a problem, even if it's common. Like, so,
a neighbor running a fire in the fireplace can kind of smell a little annoying when you go outside, but I don't know how much of a judgment you're going to get over a minor annoyance.
Yeah.
As opposed to if they're burning trash in their backyard or something.
Yeah. In a sense, the answer is there isn't really a line. It's just having a proportionate response. So if there's a fire, just a wood fire next door, and you don't like the smell, I guess the settlement would be, okay, it's $5 there, and now it's settled. And, that's not really a problem. But
yeah, but it's like because they've been talking about, you need to pay your ship. First of all, everyone does. If you drive on the road, then you're contributing to pollution and CO2 and everything else. Even if you're feeling all, great that you're driving an electric car, you still got to plug it in somewhere.
Yep.
And like if you're fortunate enough to be in my case, because most of my power comes from a nuclear plant that's like 2 miles from me. Most of the rest comes from a hydroelectric plant, and also an independent company just built, I think it's just like a mile or two down the road from me. They built a solar farm, and they're putting that in the grid and getting the money from the net metering. So basically, all the electricity I'm using is green. So should I be exempt from those taxes for the electricity I run? You know?
Yeah, well, if the tax was based on the carbon emissions rather than just straight up the energy, then yeah, you would be your energy bill would be cheaper because you're using clean energy.
Yeah, I would think that would be, you know, how it would work, but that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about everyone gets money and the government, everyone has to pay money and the government gets it. That's what they're talking about.
Yeah. Elon Musk today tweeted about how a Scandinavian country was just passed a law requiring or prohibiting the sale or importation of gasoline and diesel vehicles by 2030, and that's just the wrong approach. I mean, for one thing,
and so you're just talking about importing
or manufacture. So there will be no
or manufacture.
So basically, after 2030, as the diesel and gasoline vehicles die,
I'm guessing it's not Norway.
Let's look up what he
because Norway has a lot of oil reserves.
Yeah,
they'd stand to lose out.
Yeah, well, the thing, you know, it's a really dumb idea because diesel vehicles can be run off of carbon neutral fuel. So,
sure.
You know, what's the point of banning those? In that case, the energy source is clean energy, anyways, or relatively clean energy. You know, there's debates about, you know, what the actual carbon footprint after you factor in, you know, all the harvesting and infrastructure surrounding it, but presumably
it still just gets me that all these people are complaining and they want clean energy and carbon emissions are going to destroy the planet, and yet they hate nuclear with a passion.
Yeah, it was Sweden,
ridiculous.
By the way. Yeah. Yeah. It's that I cannot stand leftists who rant against, you know, about global warming, but also oppose reforming nuclear regulations to allow more nuclear plants to be built. That's those people just do not care about facts and practical solutions. They just live in a fantasy world, or they're just virtue signaling, and I want nothing to do with that kind of an attitude towards politics.
Well, oh my God, it's like the stuff that blew up this week over that video that was completely taken out of context, you know, the protesters and the Native American guy. And it's like, if you just do the slightest amount of research, you'll see that what the news media was covering on that is a load of crap. And yet everyone just went onto Twitter like, oh, it's horrible. These high schoolers are terrible. They were even saying like there should be a school shooting there and stuff like that. And it's like, it would have taken you 30 seconds on the internet to figure out that that was a load of crap. And I've always kind of hated the term sheeple, but these people, I mean, they're really making me want to use that term on them, because everything the news media says, they just go with completely uncritically to the point where they actually advocate violence against others.
You have like the one Saturday Night Live writer who's offering blow jobs for people who assault those teenagers.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have the people who just go back and say, oh no, the Covington school had blackface, even though that was a blackout game. And they just said there was war paint. Let's take everything out of context to try and paint these children.
And I'm sure that 99% of the people out there probably agree that it's ridiculous, but that 1% gets so much attention, and you know.
Yeah.
This should really tell you a lot about the state of racism in this country. You know that the left has an information farm where they comb through all of the stories that are out there, all the tweets and everything, and they find something that shows that racism exists in America, and they, anytime they find something like that, they're going to slather that all over the internet. But
yeah, there's like a video where it looks like some.
Despite this,
where
most of the stories that they present end up being taken out of context. So it's like, wait a minute, we live in a country with 300 million Americans, and the best examples of racism that the left can find, most of those are taken out of context, and the people are actually not being racist at all. And in fact, there's examples of people being racist against them in that very context.
Well, that's what was going on with this. What apparently these people were doing was protesting some people who were racist against whites. They were calling themselves like the Black Hebrew Israelis or something like that. And they were saying a lot of racist stuff, and these protesters didn't like it, so they were trying to drown them out. But I mean, you even have things like here's where it looks like in the background of this video, someone might be given something resembling the OK sign. And that's a secret signal to all the Nazis out there, and we have to, go crazy and blow it all out of proportion.
Dog whistles, and I'm profoundly skeptical about whether dog whistles exist at all. I mean,
it's one of those things where even if they exist, as soon as anyone else finds out about it, they'd have to change them. So as soon as it came out, which is a 4chan prank, by the way, but assuming that they really were using the OK sign to secretly communicate, as soon as that got out to anyone else, they changed the sign.
Right. So, and it's oddly convenient that all of these dog whistles are things that are, they're not that specific, like that. Oh, that means white power? What?
One of my favorite examples from this is from a major media site whose name I can't remember, which said wanking to anime girls is a secret sign for supporting Donald Trump.
Someone out there will believe it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure anime porn actually, and anime porn has been around since long before the internet. It was probably one of the first things on the internet. That's absolutely
probably as soon as someone in Japan was able to draw, there was anime porn.
Yeah, that's kind of technically how it was. Like even before when it was like really quote unquote anime, like the sort of pre 20th century Japanese art and the like, there was definitely a lot of porn.
Yeah,
well, and it's like we're looking at things like, from thousands of years ago where, there are these, sculptures of women with, enormous bosoms and guys with enormous schlongs. And they were like, oh, yes, these were their fertility gods and goddesses and stuff like that. I'm like, no, that's porn.
Yeah.
Like, the Venus of Willendorf. Can't go wrong with that.
Japanese tentacle porn specifically has been around since at least 1814. If you just look up "The Dream of the Fisherman's Wife," is a famous Japanese drawing, and yeah, it's tentacle porn.
I have a theory that the more repressive the culture, the more interesting the porn.
Exactly.
I mean, look at some of the things that we're doing in Victorian times,
Oh my goodness.
That's got to be true. Yeah.
Although there's admittedly a lot of weirder stuff out there these days on the internet.
Oh yeah, what is it? Schrodinger's porn, or what's the rule of the internet? Oh, Rule 34.
Rule 34.
If it exists, there's porn of it.
Yeah, sometimes I'll go to Google Images for a good laugh. Not a good wank, just a good laugh to see what kind of stuff I can find.
Oh my God.
Even if you're not looking for it, as long as you have, the safe search turned off by default, and you just search for something, and the images scroll down and up. There's going to be some porn in there of it.
Especially if you're using like other like non-Google search engines, like especially Bing.
DuckDuckGo is the one I use.
Oh yeah, me too. The thing about stuff like search engines and web browsers is that you can say about large social media, oh, I can't use these alternatives. There's nobody on them. Well, you don't have that excuse for using alternative browsers and search engines. Like, you don't need people to use those for you to get their full value. That's it's just one of those things. So if you're still using Google and Google Chrome, just stop and switch. Gosh darn it, stop and switch.
Well, that's why I prefer Firefox, but let's be honest, Mozilla has done some kind of iffy stuff these last few years too.
Yeah, I'm using Vivaldi, which is Chromium based, but it's not.
Yeah, that's
Google.
still Google.
Oh, it is?
Yep. Google makes Chrome, and now it's open source, so they can change it however they want. But like there's I think I put this in the list to cover on the podcast, but apparently Google wants to change the extension API to stop ad blockers, because of course that's like a lot of their revenue is from ads, but that'll be in Chromium. So I mean, it'll extend to all the Chromium based browsers like Brave and all the others.
Yeah, so basically, I'd say that in that coming time, there's going to be a revolution, because I've heard like half the internet uses ad blockers.
Yeah, and I mean, it would really
more than half at this point.
And I mean, it would really get in the way of something like airtime, which is saying, hey, let's just replace ads, with cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And help people that way. But you don't have Google as a middleman there getting their cut. So.
Yeah, something like 60% of all browser traffic comes from Chrome.
So there's going to be a really large negative reception to that. Like, if they, I don't know what's going through the heads of like these large tech giants. Are they trying to destroy themselves? Because a lot of people don't realize that the large tech sites are starting to fail and falter. And the alternatives are starting to grow and prosper, like especially.
That's what happened with Patreon just now. Patreon took a huge hit. They made a big mistake, and now Subscribestar is reaping the benefits. What'll be interesting is whether Subscribestar becomes the all-inclusive alternative, or whether they basically have to polarize, so the liberals are on Patreon and the conservatives are on Subscribestar almost exclusively.
Hey, I don't mind a more decentralized mode of these payment processors.
Yeah, but just look at the history of how these things go. Yeah, Chrome is dominant, but it used to be IE was dominant, and it was Microsoft, and no one could touch it, and they were a monopoly, and we have to break up Microsoft. Well, they didn't, and Chrome took over anyway. Before Facebook, it was MySpace. Before the Google search engine, it was Yahoo. 10 years from now, it'll probably be completely different companies. This is how this goes. They get, they become these big behemoths, but then they forget the reason why they got so big and why people turn toward them, and then people start turning away from them onto the next thing.
Or hey, maybe there won't be a next one. Maybe people will just go back to a more decentralized internet. Like, what I'm actually thinking of having made is sort of a RSS-like thing where you have a bunch of websites. They send like a code for an embed to a certain address, like kind of like your email address, but not really. And it'll embed on the website like you're scrolling through Twitter, but really the site you're scrolling through isn't hosting anything. It's just displaying embeds from other sites.
Well, they're talking about doing stuff like that. This is actually what BitTube does, because it doesn't host any of the videos. The videos go on IPFS, which is a decentralized file sharing. And there are people who are talking about setting up, a blockchain for, a Twitter-like thing that will be completely decentralized. And people could post on there and you get a little bit of cryptocurrency when people like it or whatever. But I mean, it would just be stored in the blockchain and no one could censor it.
What I'm saying is something more of like, say, a website makes a post, then every time it posts, it has like a large list of addresses that it sends its stuff to, kind of like an email list, like if you know how those work.
I don't know, it seems like a lot easier just because that's basically what a blockchain would do. You'd go and make the post and you'd put it in the blockchain, and then all the miners would verify it, and all of the nodes for that cryptocurrency would have it.
Yeah, and the thing with these sites, we're with this kind of a site, is that it's if one site either goes down or gets corrupt, then you can very easily just move it on over to another site. Like, say, you just go on the websites you're following, update your address, and then boom, you're right on over. It's not like Twitter or Gab or Minds where you have to worry about the site becoming a ghost town.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the thing they're doing on BitTube, because of course they have to take down things like copyrighted material, but all they're really doing it is delisting it from their site. You can't remove anything from IPFS, and if anyone still has the link that has the hash in it, you can get it. You can spread that link around and do whatever you want.
So Shane, in your humble opinion, which cryptocurrency do you think seems most viable?
I am really liking what Dash is doing. Their system, they have the masternodes, which is this proof of stake on top of a proof of work. It's really put them in a unique position. They just upgraded the network so that by default, something like 90 to 95% of all transactions, and the kind of transactions you would do, at like a store or something, if you're buying something, at a coffee shop or something, those transactions will be confirmed and irreversible and protected from double spends in less than 2 seconds. And so that really makes it good. And they're working on another upgrade, which
wait time with Bitcoin right now.
I think Bitcoin screwed up too much. Bitcoin Cash looks like they're trying to pick up the pieces and do it better, but yeah, they've got version 14 coming up, with all sorts of stuff. And I'm trying to think of some of the stuff they said they were doing. And then after that is going to these versions are like 0.13 and 0.14. After that, it'll be 1.0. And they're talking about having this whole setup where instead of sending cryptocurrency to like this big, long, random mess of an address, you can just register a user on the network and people just send it to that user and things like that.
Interesting.
So
I'm one of those, I don't know how programming works. I just like the economics of it kind of guy, but yeah, that does.
Well, and that's another thing about Dash is that they've got people. I mean, it's not even them, it's other groups that are doing it, but a lot of them, apply for funding from the Dash Treasury and get it. But like in Venezuela, where the Bolivar last year, I think the final figure from the World Bank was it experienced 1.3 million% inflation in 2018. So the Dash people have been on the ground there. They've got more than 2,500 merchants in Venezuela, and they've been teaching people how to use them. And they even have a system where you can send and receive Dash over text in case you don't have a smartphone, because a lot of people there are too poor to afford smartphones. But
so what kind of software is used to interact with Dash and keep track of your wallet?
Well, generally it's a Dash wallet, and they've actually released phones in Venezuela that have Dash wallets built into them already. But it's just an app you download. Or you can do it, like I said, you can do it over text without having to have a smartphone.
So Dash has an official app that'll interface. Well,
they've got official apps, and then of course there are other wallets like Jax and Koinomi that support Dash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be reluctant to trust third party, especially with my limited knowledge of the cryptography algorithms that play here.
Also,
but they're talking about like it's a 3-stage plan, and they're still primarily focusing on stage 1, but they're making kind of some steps into stage 2. stage one is to get actual brick and mortar places, like they just did one called Church's Chicken, which apparently is a big chain down there, to accept Dash. And then the second step is to get people to use Dash to, and of course they have to do a little bit of that because the more people use Dash, the more stores get it, etc. And so it's a chicken and egg thing. And so they're working on getting both of those kind of at the same time, but the merchants are first. And then the third step is closing the loop where, okay, merchants are accepting Dash, people are paying in Dash. Now stores, pay your employees in Dash. And now you've got a closed loop there, and you don't need any government money.
Yeah, but except for the underlying technology seems to be the best with Dash. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, pretty much. For if you're talking about just a cryptocurrency to use as money, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about investing a little bit in cryptocurrency now that I have a little bit of money to invest.
Well, I'm not, making any investment recommendations. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. All this is highly speculative. Cryptocurrency is still very much in its infancy.
Well, markets for fungible assets are inherently unpredictable. So,
yeah, the ones I have right now, and I'm just kind of holding on to them mostly, but I have Dash, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin. And I don't believe in putting all my eggs in one basket. Oh, and I have some BitTube as well, of course, because I've been posting videos on there and getting some from that. And of course, I'm running the extension and getting a tiny bit of change just for browsing the web. It's kind of cool.
Also, speaking of Venezuela, yeah, I guess the American empire has turned its eyes towards Venezuela, and they want Maduro removed.
Well, because you had this election last year, and the official results, I mean, we covered this in the podcast, the official results were that Maduro won in a landslide, but they have pretty solid proof that the voting machines they were using were hacked. And the people in the best position to do that kind of hacking is the actual government, is Maduro's government. So.
Yeah, that's no surprise for banana republics.
Yeah, and that's the thing about our elections, because as iffy as all of this, Russia conspiracy theory, about rigging the election and everything, we do know that the Russians, and this may have just been kind of a proof of concept to see if it was possible, but we do know that they were attempting to break into election systems and seeing if they could change vote totals. And apparently, from everything they found, was that our elections are so decentralized. Well, like in mine, there's an actual paper ballot and you fill in an oval. Good. But the others, even the ones that have voting machines, there are different voting machines with different stuff. And basically, they could change who was mayor of a small town, but they couldn't change who was president because it's just so decentralized.
Yeah. One thing I am concerned about this Venezuela drama, though, is that I'm kind of concerned it's going to launch Cold War II into full swing, because Russia is getting very close. Like they're coming in with stuff like investments and.
Well, I mean, Venezuela, China has been supporting. They've basically been carrying Venezuela for like 20 years or something.
Well, they've been doing a very good job of it, as it seems.
Well, that's government for you. But apparently that's the only reason that the government hasn't completely gone under, is China keeps bailing them out.
But I'm just concerned if Russia decides to protect the Maduro regime from any American CIA-backed coup or rebels, that's going to make a lot of the tensions between the two countries a lot worse than they already are right now, because people don't realize that this administration is one of the most Moscow hostile since the fall of the Soviet Union. Like, there are so many anti-Russian policies that have been pushed in the last 3 years. You just can't say, Trump is a Russian puppet. Like, that's just a neocon.
Yeah, the whole thing's ridiculous. I mean, even if it was Russia that was hacking the DNC everything else. The idea that they were doing it in collusion with Donald Trump and Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and every other, it's completely ridiculous. It is it's Alex Jones level ridiculous.
Yeah. Also, Congress decided to block Trump from exiting NATO, except for like 22 people who voted nay. So that's amazing.
Yeah, the fact he even wanted to get out of NATO is pretty cool, because why does that still exist?
Well, you know why. Military-industrial complex and American empire.
Yeah, well, I mean, it started because, the Soviet Union was this huge, big, evil empire, and we need to protect our European friends. And then the Soviet Union went away, but all this other stuff is still around. In fact, even if you adjust for inflation, I forget what the figure is, but our military budget is a lot bigger than it was even at the height of the Cold War, even if you adjust for inflation.
Well, it's one of those... what was I about to say? I forgot what I was about to say. I was going to say something awesome and I forgot.
Simon Petrikov 39 wants to know what my opinion is on the cryptocurrency market. I don't know. I think it's kind of a mistake to be obsessing over what the price of cryptocurrency is at the moment, and consider the use. Like, people ask me what cryptocurrency they should get into. Well, what are you going to use it for, and what are they taking? I think like in New Hampshire, there's a lot of businesses that take Dash, but apparently Bitcoin Cash is making a lot of inroads in, I think, Tokyo. So, I mean, if that's the case, if you're in that area, then you'd want to use that particular cryptocurrency because it's more useful for you. But consider the use. Don't really obsess over price.
Like, I'm actually looking at cryptocurrency as a cryptocurrency. Like, I actually think that these bull markets of the past 2 years have been good things, because it's weeding out the whales. And people who say, oh, you just put it in here, leave it in for a few days, and you're a millionaire. Like, no, that's...
Yeah, I think those days are over, and like, people are talking about, well, it's like, I don't think it's going to go down anymore, but people are like, oh yeah, there's going to be another rally and it's going to go bang up. It's like, well, we don't know that. And I'm kind of hoping that what we're seeing now, and I have no idea, I don't have a crystal ball, I can't tell the future, but I'm kind of hoping that what we're seeing now is a leveling off, so that this will basically be the price. And as long as it's a stable price, I think you'll see a lot. But it's interesting because in the 2018 bear market, you had, oh my God, Steam it laid off like 90% of its people, and there are a couple others that had to do a lot of layoffs. But Dash, they actually grew. They had more users because, first of all, when you had that big run up in 2017, they didn't go, oh, woohoo, lots of money, let's do all this stuff. They were still kind of focusing on incremental things, but also they've been focusing on actually getting people on the ground to use it. Yeah. I mean, that's that plus the technology behind it, that kind of makes me think that, I mean, from what I know, 5 years from now, Dash might be dead and some other new kind of crypto that's so much better will take over for it. I don't know. I can't tell the future, but that's the big one I'm looking at for now.
Yeah. And then especially with stuff like PayPal and Stripe shutting off people from using their services to get fiat money, that's going to push an even bigger demand for something else that
1.0 of Dash is supposed to enable is something that I don't think any other cryptocurrency has, which is recurring payments. So you could do something like Patreon or Subscribestar and do it on network.
Yeah.
Because you can always do it like you can do it with Coinbase and make recurring payments from your Coinbase account, but that's not your Bitcoin wallet. Coinbase has, all the private keys. And that's the thing. Up until this point, someone else has needed the private keys in order to make that happen for you. Or I think they tried something with Ethereum to do it through a smart contract and it didn't work very well. But with Dash being able to do it on network where you still have exclusive control over your private keys and you can still do recurring payments, I think that's going to be major.
Yeah. Like, I think a large hurdle for crypto is the sort of ease of use. Like, it's not like fiat money where you have this large cartel of banks who do all the work for you. You have to rely on a lot of other third parties, some of which are either A, sketchy, or B, Coinbase, of whom has the curse of being Coinbase. But I think with stuff like, say, Dash, if Dash were to make obtaining and moving crypto around a lot easier, then it's really gonna set into motion a large crypto revolution in online or internet commerce.
But I mean, even just for real world use, and you're talking about ease of use. Yeah, it's still a little bit, you know, there's still a lot you have to do. But think about, like, and if you have go look at how difficult it was to actually pull up a web browser and browse the web in 1992. And now everyone can do it. Yeah. So
like, I'm pretty sure that obtaining crypto today is a lot easier than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of roadblocks because of things like payment processors not wanting to, you know, deal with, you know, doing crypto exchanges and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, well, like you have people like Google again, you know, because BitTube last year they tried doing an Android app of their video platform, and Google just kept using one excuse after another to kick them off of the Google Play Store.
Yep, that's what I thought.
Yeah. But they're not working on it right now because I haven't been pushing it because there's still a lot of the website that needs to be fixed. But they're not going to fix the website as it is because they're focusing on this ground up redesign, which sounds like it'll be, they're kind of making it sound like it'll be more like a cross between YouTube and Discord kind of thing, because they'll have like chat and comment functions and other social media type functions in there. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
Yeah, but again, I'm really focused on that one idea I was telling you about, like sort of the RSS email list kind of thing, where it's so decentralized that it's pretty much impossible to keep down, aside from shutting off websites who do give out like addresses and such.
Yeah, but I mean, look at how they haven't been able to shut down the Pirate Bay.
Yeah,
it's still going after all these years.
Yep. Like, that's one of the, like, again, and then there's just the Streisand effect. Like, this 2018 was amazing for Gab, if I recall correctly. Like, they got so many new users. And then Gab isn't even just the only competitor to large social media sites like Twitter and Facebook. Like, there's Mastodon, which is, I actually think Mastodon has a terrible interface, but...
Yeah, I've got a couple of Mastodon addresses, and I was trying to give them out to people, and like no one used it. And I was trying to like follow people, and I don't know, it needs work.
Yeah, it's I don't know. For some reason, it's like everything is not in the center of my screen where I'd expect it. It's on the side. Like, what's going on? Is my screen too big? But yeah.
But I mean, if you have a completely decentralized platform, maybe run on a blockchain where each, whatever the equivalent of a tweet would be, is another transaction in the blockchain, then anyone could make any website and design it however they wanted, and you could pick your favorite.
Also, wasn't there this competitor to blockchain called Hashgraph? Or
I'm not familiar with that one.
I think one of the reasons MySpace failed was because it was too customizable.
Really now?
That was my personal impression. Everybody's page was different, and everyone thought they were a web designer, and they create all these hideously ugly pages chocked full of GIFs and ugly text. And
there just wasn't really a good way of getting all of your information together in a single place. And that's what Facebook did, and that's what Facebook did better. So people
Right.
do that. There's probably a bunch of different reasons, but
everybody's page on Facebook was basically the same, and you could get the information that you wanted, without having to scroll through all a different design.
Like one of the problems with like a lot of the new social media sites that kind of is a really large hindrance to their competitiveness is the fact that they're pretty much the Australia of social media, where basically all the people who got banned go there and spew a bunch of vile, and it makes the whole site look unappealing because, number one, people don't like being associated with those types, and number two, people don't like continuously listening to those types. Whereas they have stuff like their memes, their friends, the artists they're following, the celebrities, the companies like a Disney or whatever. They have that all on Twitter, and they're not on like Gab or Minds. So that's a very large hindrance to the growth.
It's a sad fact that any safe haven for free speech also tends to gather a lot of Nazis.
Yeah, but I mean, think about how it used to be. I am really disappointed in the ACLU recently because they used to be the first ones to say, yes, the KKK and yes, the neo-Nazis have the right to speak. We don't like them. We don't like what they have to say, but we will go to court. We will defend them from anyone who, tries to stop them from using their First Amendment rights, because that's the only way the rest of us can be protected. And now it seems like the ACLU has just sold them out. It's like, no, free speech doesn't apply to them. It's like, geez.
Very disappointing. It's really sad to see organizations like that, or even individuals kind of flip on their position. The comedian Sarah Silverman, I really don't like her because she like made a name for herself with edgy, offensive humor, and then once she got famous, all of a sudden she took this hardcore leftist approach and sold out all the other aspiring comedians who like telling crass or borderline offensive jokes. It's
amazing. It's like completely the opposite of how it was when I was growing up, where the left was all about, freedom of speech and, free expression, and especially sexual expression, and the edgy stuff and offensive stuff like George Carlin and Lenny Bruce and people like that. And it was the right who was all conservative and was like, no, free speech doesn't apply to this garbage. Jesse Helms up there, the founding fathers never wanted it to apply to this. And now it's completely the opposite. And it's like the left is all against this stuff. The right is actually defending free speech. I'm like, am I in the freaking Twilight Zone? What happened?
Like that's here's another interesting thing. You have like the Trump supporters saying defending or ignoring Trump's overstepping of executive power, and basically the left is making talking about executive overstepping look lame because they're the left. But if Obama did these sort of things, like if he shut down the government for an entire month to get his way, then they would be
He shut it down for like a week, didn't he?
Huh? Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't as long, but it was the same crazy stuff where you even had stuff like, we're shutting down this park, which was really just a place where you could pull over. There were parking spaces. You could pull over and look out, at the scenery and everything. There wasn't even any personnel there. They closed it down by putting up traffic cones. It's like, but you had to pay someone to put up the traffic cones. How does that save it? It's not. It's theater. It's complete theater.
Apparently, the IRS is starting.
So brazen just during the Obama administration when the Washington went hard blue for a while there, and it's really interesting to see the stark how extremist the left got between 2008 and 2016. And the YouTube channel Freedom Tunes has a great parody video.
I love Seamus.
That. I love the video. It's the left then versus now, and it's 2008 versus 2016. And there's so many issues where, Seamus is going up and he's all like, I think you guys are socialists. I don't trust you. And back in 2008, the Democrats would be all like, God, we're not socialists. That's a total straw man. And, 2016, they're like, yeah, we're socialists, and that's not a bad thing. Or, in 2008, they'll say, yeah, we just want gay people to get married. We don't want to force people to bake cakes for gay couples. And then 2016, no, if it should be against the law to discriminate against gay couples, in your bakery. 2008, they had. Oh, let's see, what was one of the other ones?
Well, you can't discriminate against your bakery, your own private property. You have to be forced to work because it's discrimination. But if Twitter and Facebook and everyone else want to kick you off, well, they're private companies. They can do what they want.
I mean, just ignore all the subsidies, connections, bribe, cronyist laws, etc., etc. They're definitely private companies.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just talking about the basic hypocrisy of it. It's like, well, you take what you're saying about social media and apply it to a bakery.
Another great example is if you were to say to leftists in 2008, I think PC culture is getting out of hand. Before you know it, just being straight is going to be considered offensive. And then, lo and behold, you have people arguing that if you wouldn't date a trans person, you're a bigot. That used to be parody,
Yeah, I mean, that's how it happens. Every time we say something like that and you go, no, that's not. That's a slippery slope fallacy. It's a fallacy. It's not going to happen. Pretty much every single time it ends up happening.
Yep.
Right.
Like, I think they were like talking about, oh, well, we got to ban smoking for health reasons. And you're like, well, what's next? Banning fatty foods? That's not going to happen. Don't be ridiculous. And then they started banning fatty foods.
Yep. Oh, what the gun control though? Like, oh my goodness! I just remembered that one thing. The article titled "The $15 minimum wage is here. Here's why we need $33 minimum wages." Like, oh my god!
Yeah,
have you seen that?
If 10 years ago people were talking about upping the minimum wage and like, well, why not up it to $30? Oh, don't be ridiculous. We're just talking about now. They're talking about $30.
Yep. It's a never-ending spiral with the left. But anyway,
the last minimum wage didn't work. So what we need to do is up it some more.
Yeah.
We need to do more of.
Don't you realize that every time you up the minimum wage, that increases the cost of living, and that's why you then are fighting to up it again later? You don't actually get ahead of the game that way.
I mean, just look at Brazil in, like, I think it was the late 90s and early 2000s, where they had this wonderful idea of indexing wages with the inflation rate. And then, of course, it ended up being hyperinflation. And, hey, look, I'm a billionaire. Now, what can I buy with this? Oh, a cup of coffee or something. I don't think it was quite that bad. But it's like in Venezuela, they now have the... Oh God, what's it called? It used to be called the Bolivar Fuerte because years ago they cut 3 zeros off the Bolivar and called it the Bolivar Fuerte. Now it's called the Bolivar. I think it's a word that translates as sovereign or something like that. But they lopped off another 5, and I was watching a demonstration of someone buying a cup of coffee with Dash in Venezuela, and it cost 10 of the new Bolivar, the sovereign Bolivar. And it was this equivalent. And I'm thinking, like, wait a minute, let me add some zeros on here. If it had still been the original Bolivar, that would have been, the price of that would have been, I think it would have been 1 billion or maybe 10 billion Bolivar. If they hadn't kept lopping off the zeros.
Oh,
but that's not a solution. Lopping off the zeros doesn't solve anything.
Oh, you libertarians, printing money doesn't cause any problems. Like what? You cranks on sound money. How dare you question our monetary policy?
You know, I have I thought of an interesting thought experiment that I'd love to present to a leftist. You ask them, okay, imagine a guy who's like a total Scrooge. He builds up a gigantic billion-dollar business, keeps all of that money, never spends.
You're dropping out, Alex.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can't. How's that? Can you hear me fine?
Yeah. He keeps all the money and he never spends it, and then you drop down after that.
He burns it instead. What if he just burned all of the dollars that he earned? Now, a leftist, I think, would think that's a scumbag. He could have helped all these people with that money. But if you think about it, that's probably the most selfless thing that you could do, because you contributed all of this economic productivity and then never cashed in on what society owes you for doing all that.
But you're actually helping everyone else by making the dollar just a tiny bit stronger. I never understood why it was illegal to destroy Federal Reserve notes. That never made any sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense from the government's maybe because the
you think it would just put them in a better position. You know, a guy burns $1 million. Hey, we can print another billion and spend it on stuff now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, maybe because the government has such a gigantic debt that if the value of the dollar goes up, they owe more money.
The justification, I think, is, of course, the Keynesian nonsense of savings being bad for the economy and just spending willy-nilly is always good.
Yeah, the paradox of thrift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these, the rich, they hoard all the money, they keep it in large vaults and they swim in it. Well, number one, no, they don't. They invested in stuff like industry and paying your wages. And number two, if they did, that would be a good thing, because it would make all your prices go down and make your purchasing power with your wages go up, as well as your savings being more valuable. Like people used to be able to... Oh,
you're talking about taking money and locking it away somewhere. What do you think bank reserves are?
Yeah.
When a bank keeps money in reserve, that means they're locking it in a vault and they're not using it. Well, and most of the dollars that exist are actually in reserve in banks all over the world.
Yeah.
And if they all decided to cash in on those dollars and, you know, keep gold or some other currency or something instead in reserve, and they cashed in on all those dollars, we'd have major hyperinflation.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be beautiful if those reserve dollars just poof?
Well, I think they're mostly numbers in a computer anyway. But.
Oh, 95% of money doesn't exist, or not dollars specifically. I don't know about euros or yens, but I know for a fact that 95% of United States dollars are just numbers in a bank computer.
Well, that's what a lot of the cryptocurrency critics are saying, but it's just digital. How can we trust it if it's just digital? Your money's already digital.
Yeah, and the thing is, with cryptocurrency, you know that those numbers actually represent an investment in resources to mine the Bitcoin in the first place. So, you know, or whichever cryptocurrency you're using, typically they require that proof of work, and that's not true for dollars.
Yep.
Right? Gold, like you ask people why gold is valuable. Well, it can be used in stuff. Well, the number of things that gold can be used for is very small. I'm a chemist. I actually have worked with using actual gold for practical applications, but it's so rare to come across these applications that you know, gold is one of the more useless metals. And Well,
Yeah, it's mostly
like
jewelry.
scandium, but yeah.
I think the only advantage it has, because like people say it's a better conductor than copper, it's not. It's not even close. But the thing it has over copper and a lot of other metals is it doesn't oxidize.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It doesn't oxidize.
And you
Uh-oh.
dropped out again, Alex.
I think he died for real this
But
time.
I mean,
Oh,
people
there we
talk
go.
about there's not as much of a use for gold, so we can't use it as money. Money is a use,
Yeah.
Right,
and gold.
right.
People kept going to gold because so much of it works well for that. It's rare without being too rare. It's malleable without being too soft.
No,
You
it's
can
not that
combine it down, combine it back together. It's easy to test for purity. All sorts of stuff make it work really well as money.
Not to mention a lot of wealthy warlords and aristocrats would oftentimes give merchants a lot of resources in exchange for gold for the purpose of jewelry and whatnot. Like, that's my theory anyways.
Yes, Simon, gold is used for electronics because it doesn't oxidize, but the primary use, or what makes gold so valuable, is simply because of how much resources it takes to procure it. The amount of gold that's actually used in electronics is so tiny because gold is so because of the properties of gold. The plating on electronics is just a minuscule, absolutely minuscule amount, just on the very surface. Atoms thick of gold creates a nice, good conductive surface. So the amount of gold that has been used to produce electronics is just a very, very tiny fraction of the gold that has been mined. And most of the gold that has been mined simply because it takes a tremendous amount of resources to actually procure any amount of gold. And the reason for that is because, well, gold doesn't oxidize, and it also happens to be an extremely dense metal. So the only gold that we have on Earth is stuff that fell
from asteroids. Yeah, you dropped out again. Yeah, there's like an asteroid out there they know of with like $1 trillion worth of gold on it, but it would be too difficult to go and get. And it's like, I think we're beyond the time of prospecting for gold, because I think the gold that's in the ground that's at least fairly easy to get to, we know about. And if the price of gold goes up, then we'd start doing that. But so for that reason, you can kind of figure on the amount of gold being stable.
Yeah. I was going to say that gold in asteroids is probably as abundant as mercury or tungsten, which are also in the same, or have roughly the same atomic number, or within a dozen, 10 or so. Tungsten and mercury are common because they do oxidize in nature, and their oxide minerals are buoyant in magma. That's the thing, is that the Earth's crust is constantly subducting under itself, and every time it does that, it melts down the rocks. And what you have is then the gold actually sinks to the center of the Earth, and the rest of the elements will stay floating because they're bonded to oxygen. That's why.
And you dropped out again. But yeah, I think even with a lot of these electronics uses, a lot of them were kind of scammy. I don't know if the monster cable people are still around, but it used to be audiophiles like, oh, you got to do, monster cables because the cable is gold plated. And I remember the James Randi Educational Foundation doing all sorts of tests and blind tests. They couldn't tell the difference between audio from a monster cable that cost $100 and one from Walmart or something that costs $2, because it might make a difference in the long run on the actual ends of the connectors that are exposed. But gold plating a wire that's inside an insulator is ridiculous.
Yeah, that is ridiculous. In fact, one of the best conductors is aluminum. It's actually a better conductor than copper, and it's cheaper than copper.
Actually, what I read was silver was an even better conductor than aluminum.
Is the best conductor. Aluminum is up there though. Silver is obviously a lot more expensive than aluminum, but the problem with aluminum is that it oxidizes so incredibly readily. It creates an oxide layer instantly on just exposure to the air. So it's difficult to make good applications for aluminum cables and wiring because you can't get that good contact. But if you do have an aluminum wire that it is properly plated with gold or nickel or copper at the ends, then that would actually work better.
Yeah, silver oxidizes pretty easily because last year I went and took a look at the silver coins I have in my collection, and despite the fact that I have them in the little sealed packets, that I bought to put them in, despite the fact they were sealed, they still tarnished quite a bit. So I set up the thing to where you have the baking soda and the aluminum foil and stuff like that, and it's kind of cool just watching it go in there, and you can just kind of watch the tarnish go away. But that's the way you'd want to do it, because that doesn't remove any of the silver, unlike a lot of the other compounds you can buy. And if you remove silver, of course, you harm the value of them.
Right, with silver polish, you actually scrub off that silver oxide layer, and that's. But you do want to electrolytically reduce it back to silver. The thing with silver, it oxidizes the oxygen permeable. So so over time, the oxygen actually permeates all the way through, and that's why you get such a buildup on silver items.
Yeah, so if you have silver, you want to take it out every now and then and do that. And I mean, this was even. I mean, I can't imagine if they had been exposed to air and not been in those little container thingies that you get. Yeah. They just snap shut, so they're not like hermetically sealed or anything. They're still getting some air. But I mean, if they had just been exposed to air, they would have gone much more quickly.
Boy.
Oh, let's see what the chat's saying. Simon Petrikov says the Christians got dethroned, so the left used the same power the Christians had to suppress dissonance. It is amazing how much the modern left is like the moral majority was when I was growing up. Oh, we can't have women wearing, bikinis and thongs and stuff like that. And now the left is against it because, oh, that's sexist. Feminism means we don't wear that. It's like, do you have any idea how hard won a battle it was for women to be able to wear bikinis?
Yeah.
Human nature doesn't change. These are the same. I think it's the same genotypes. I bet if you were to compare the genomes of the hardcore leftists with the Puritans from the early 20th century, you'd probably find a lot of overlap, and the individualists, there's probably some genes at play here. It's so remarkably similar, and it's amazing that they don't have the introspection to recognize it.
Hopefully we'll start dominating more, because people talk about how the left's taking over everything. But think about 10 years ago. If you wanted to get together a bunch of people of not just libertarians or libertarian leaning people, but actual anarcho-capitalists, and above all, to do it in a foreign country where they'd have to get a passport or anything, how many would you have gotten? 3 if you're lucky. Now they have Anarchapulco in Mexico, and thousands of anarchists are showing up to it.
Yep.
So it was like these ideas are spreading.
Oh yeah.
I would like to
the Mason
see
Institute.
I'd like to see a CSED that requires that you have like an IQ of at least 120 to join.
Like the Mises Institute is currently the most popular economic site on Earth. Like, that's just amazing. Like, I don't see what people are saying. You libertarians, you're never gonna win. I don't see what they're saying. Sure, I don't think we've gone back up to the glory days of the Ron Paul revolution just yet, but we are far from failing.
Well, and it's like you were talking about the high IQ stuff, Alex. There's the 999 Society, which is people who are smarter than 99.9% of the population. So the top 0.1% for IQ, which is even more discriminating than Mensa. It's like an IQ of like, I think over 146 or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But they surveyed their members on all sorts of political issues, and pretty much, you know, it wasn't even close. You go down the issues and they're following the libertarian lines.
I like hearing that. That's interesting. Sadly, I don't think I could join the 999 Society. I think that would put the IQ around probably closer to like 160. 100 or
if I remember correctly, it was 140 something, if I remember, and it was in the high 140s, if I remember correctly.
Because last time I checked, I hate to bring up my own IQ, but I think I've ballparked it around the 145 range. But I also looked up the tables. That's 3 standard deviations, I believe. I think the definition is, and I think 3 standard deviations is like 99.5 or thereabouts. Let's just look this up. We have answer machines.
Simon Petrikov says, wasn't gold alloyed with other metals because it's too soft for circulations? Yes, and if you look at like a lot of old movies or stuff like that, when someone pays for something with a coin, they'll bite it because they're trying to see if the coin is real. And kind of the impression people have had is, well, they're seeing if it's soft like gold. Actually, they're seeing if it's hard, because properly minted gold coins had, I think it was zinc or something, with some other harder metal alloyed with them to make it harder. But the fake coins were made out of softer metals. So it's the opposite of what people think it is.
Yeah.
You were right, Shane. I just looked it up. 99.9% is 3 standard deviations. So my IQ probably isn't that high because I got that so wrong.
There's a clue. I don't know what my IQ is, but apparently, I mean, I never took the Mensa exam or anything, but there were like candidates for Mensa at college. They were having Mensa people come and talk to us, and I was one of the ones that they said could go. But I ended up not being interested because, and this is probably completely unfair of me, but the one I talked to from Mensa was also my first encounter with a moon hoaxer. She was in Mensa, but she was a moon hoaxer. I'm like, wait a minute. I know we landed on the moon, people. How come?
Smart and crazy sometimes go hand in hand.
Well, it's like Michael Shermer says, smart people are good at justifying things that they came to believe for non-smart reasons.
That's true too. Yeah, and I considered joining Mensa, but one thing that kind of turned me off to it was that I did take like a practice test of theirs, and I kind of got. I can't remember what I scored. It was probably pretty close to about what they required, and but the thing was that my score had suffered because I had taken an inordinate amount of time on one particular problem that I'm convinced they actually had a bad question there. What it was like it was ship is to compass as airplane is to, and then it showed these pictures. Let's see, one of them was a windsock, and I thought that was the most likely to be true. And then the others were, I can't remember all of them, but the point was nothing was actually analogous to the compass to the ship, because the windsock.
I would think it would be something like an altimeter or something like that.
Maybe, but the options that it gave, there was no clear right answer, and so I'm like,
wait a minute. Those.
Yeah, we're depending on how you frame the you can actually come up with a rationalization for any one of the answers, and that could be considered right. And if you're writing an IQ test that it could potentially penalize people who overthink it, because they assume that there is an objective right answer, because it should be an objective test. So
yeah, I've had problems with those. I also had problems with the which one doesn't belong, where they like show you 4 fruits and I'm like, what are we going by? Color, size, sweetness? I mean, I can make it.
Right. And the people who could make a list of all the different ways you could categorize these where one stands out, those ones will do worse on that question than somebody who just takes the most obvious answer. And what's obvious isn't inherently obvious. It's so...
Yeah, well, and the thing is, with any IQ test, and I guess that's what they're trying to do, is determine your IQ. With any IQ test, it's not just are you getting the right answer, it's how quickly do you get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because someone with a high IQ should be able to get there more quickly. If you have a low IQ, there's nothing stopping you from being, a rocket scientist or whatever. It's just going to take you a lot longer to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Simon Petrikov wants to know if there are any good free IQ tests. I don't know of any. Do you?
Let's see. Jordan Peterson talked about a certain IQ test that it uses a matrix of graphics, and you have to find the one that the image that corresponds to the most sensible answer on that array of graphics. And I find that those ones, my gut feeling is that those IQ tests will probably give you the most consistent and accurate results, because they're not as subjective as some of those word-based tests, and they are more culturally universal.
Are you talking about the stuff like what would this cube look like unfolded, that kind of thing?
No, it's a specific kind of test. See if I can look up. Oh, was it the Wechsler? Maybe
something else I do really bad at is
oh, never mind.
Like, here's a sequence of numbers. What's the next number in the sequence? And I can think of 3 right off the top of my head.
Also, Shane, have you heard of John McAfee's presidential campaign?
Well, he ran in 2016. Is he doing another one?
Oh yeah, and this one he's on the IRS gave him a felony charge for tax evasion, of course. So he's literally campaigning from a boat. This madman is campaigning from his boat.
Well, what is it if he's afraid that if he sets foot in Belize, he'll be murdered and stuff like that?
I think it's one of those I don't know if he. I think it's one of those like I heard that foreign authorities have contacted him and are not gonna report him to like the IRS. But what he's planning to do is have like a bunch of surrogates and people wearing John McAfee masks with like speakers giving his speeches. Oh my goodness! This man, I don't care about the voting violates the NAP. No, I don't see any polls running, so I think I'll give this one. I think I'll give John McAfee my support in 2020 just for this alone.
I know I'm liking Adam. What's his last name? But I know I'm liking him less and less as time goes on.
Kokesh?
Kokesh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Libertarian parties, we're constantly hoping that the Libertarian Party will gain popularity. But, I think there's a interesting aspect that we're ignoring, and that is how the Libertarian Party can influence policy within the two major parties, and I think we've seen that in the Republican Party quite a bit over the last few years. For example, our current president, a Republican who actually supports marriage equality and is on record saying that it's worth trying allowing states to legalize marijuana. These are positions that would be extremely progressive for Republicans in the 90s or zeros, but I think the establishment parties are, well, at least the Republicans have warmed up to the idea that they do have to appeal to independents in order to win elections. And that's certainly, I think, what happened this last time.
But I think the point of the Libertarian Party and the point of running as a Libertarian candidate, whether it's for president or dog catcher, shouldn't be to try to become a part of the state, which is a foundation of aggression in society. It should be to open up venues of being able to talk about these things. If you run as a Libertarian candidate, guess what? Reporters will just call you up and ask you your opinion on something. Imagine that. That's not going to happen otherwise. So that should be the point.
Like Ron Paul, he didn't win anything, but he did. Like, he did spread the liberty message, and a lot of people these days.
Well, no, he won Congress.
Anti-war.
He won Congress a good number of times. He just didn't make it as president.
Right.
Yeah, he did it
as a Republican.
He didn't win the presidency.
But I mean, he's still by running for office, he was still able to get attention and get a platform and get his ideas out there.
Yeah, like that's what Tom Wood says, that we shouldn't try to campaign to win, but to get the ideas out so that these kinds of things, like, admittedly, while YouTube and the internet is a great platform, it only goes so far. Like, not everyone is watching the internet, and not everyone is watching your part of the internet.
Right.
So you have to branch out.
The strategy of the Libertarian Party should be to be a spoiler, not to necessarily to win elections, because then people will say, well, your candidate doesn't have a chance, and you either have to lie and say, no, they do if you just vote for them, but really they don't. The strategy should be, yes, my candidate doesn't have a chance of winning this election, but the demographics will be added up, and that will send a powerful message to the establishment for the next election as to who they have to appeal to in order to win.
Either that, or we could throw Bill Weld into the pot again and hope and just pray that the two candidates are. It's an embarrassment that the Libertarian Party managed to fail when you had some of the most unpopular candidates running. Like, nobody wanted Hillary. They wanted Bernie Sanders, and not many people wanted Trump at first. But the Libertarian Party, man, they blew it. They blew it. They could have been another Ron Paul. Like, there were so many things they could have done, but they blew it. And now they're a laughingstock, and they're intent on being a laughingstock.
Well, and I think what really has been disproven with the couple of times Gary Johnson has run, and then even worse, Bob Barr before him, is this idea of, oh, you need someone with political experience to come in and do it, and then you'll get the votes. Well, no, guess not. Apparently not. We've always done better when we stayed on message.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need somebody who can articulate the libertarian philosophy in a non-alienating way to appeal to lots of people on principle. Not somebody who's necessarily experienced in politics, because they're not even going to win the election anyways. It's about appealing to people to come over and become independents and wait there and hold the establishment accountable. If they want to win against each other, they got to appeal to independents.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm even somewhat disappointed in Gary Johnson. Some of his interviews and stuff, he just lost his cool, and he's not the best representation of what a libertarian of what a libertarian should what can be, or what.
But it's like back when I was running for county commissioner, there were a number of chances to go and speak in front of various groups of people, and like one of this was so long ago I can't tell you specifics, but there was one where I was trying to kind of take the libertarian position and kind of spin it to make it sound a little more palatable for the thing, and I kind of lost the audience and no one was really interested. And the next one I'm like, what the hell have I got to lose? I know I'm not going to win. I don't want to win. And I went and I just stayed on message. I stayed on point. And I mean, I was about as radical and everything as again. And I had all sorts of people coming up to me afterwards, asking me questions, about, these ideas that they had never heard anyone say before.
I should probably do something like that in Las Vegas. Like, I know we have Freedom Fest over here, but at the very least, I should start like a rally or a protest against the rising tide of red flag laws.
Yeah, those are ridiculous.
Yeah. They're a very blatant violation of the entirety of the Constitution.
Well, check out my video on mental illness and violence. And I know there are things other than mental illness they're using, but mental illness is one of them. There basically isn't any way that any diagnosis of any mental illness that I could find, at least, meant that you were actually in danger of violence. And it was always, combined with these other factors.
Yeah.
Like if you were, alcoholic.
Even psychopathy, like antisocial personality disorder doesn't correlate with crime?
Nope. None of the ones I found did, unless it was combined. Like one of the things they said it was combined with was alcoholism. If you had a mental illness and an alcohol addiction, you were more likely to be violent. But that was also true if you were not mentally ill, but were an alcoholic. So maybe, a mental illness makes you more likely to become an alcoholic, but it seems to be the alcohol, not the mental illness, that's doing it.
Yep.
And I spent months researching this video. I'm really proud of it. And I'm sure it's not comprehensive. It's not like I did the equivalent of getting a psychiatry degree, but I tried looking at this from every single angle that I could. Like one of the things like people said was schizophrenia was supposed to be one. Well, I mean, there are all sorts of different types of schizophrenia. And people talk about like the hallucinations, like, you hear the voice of God telling you, to go kill a bunch of people. But most people who have the hallucinatory schizophrenia who hear that voice say, no, I'm not going to do that. Shut up. There has to be something else going on that removes their inhibitions that makes that happen.
Yeah, and like, even then, it's still guilty until proven innocent, which is not moral and it's not constitutional.
Oh, and also guilt by association as well.
Oh goodness me, that too. And I legit need to like dress up as Hoplu and just get a bunch of the local people who are 2A guys, because I know for a fact that there's quite a bit of like Las Vegas is one of those interesting cities where you have a lot of people who are very California liberal, especially with the migration crisis of California spilling into the rest of the country. But you have a lot of people who are very liberal, very leftist people, especially after the Las Vegas shooting. But then you have like an entire subset, like a lot of people who are like I went to a gun show about like a month ago, which was actually one of the last ones they're gonna have because the new governor has decided to crack down on quote unquote private sales that were like the quote unquote loophole of gun shows. But it's like it was massive. It's not like a few people. conservatives or Republicans in the midst of like the Democratic city. No, it's a large. Like I need to dress up as I need to do that. I need to dress up as Hoplu, start a protest against red flag laws. Like there's that one protest in like what's that one city in Pennsylvania that's really starting to crack down on laws, and the gun owning community decided no, and they started a protest against the mayor. What's the one city with the Pittsburgh? That's right.
All right, we've got like 2 minutes left in the live stream, so any closing thoughts you want to get to?
Well, not much other than thank you for having me on the live stream, Shane, and I eagerly await the February hangout.
Well, thanks for supporting me.
Always.
You know, in the last 2 minutes here, I just had an idea for kind of a format that maybe we could experiment maybe with the next live stream.
Sure.
Suppose we orbit around this idea of creating a list of high school classes that we think are most important for people to learn about. You know, things that either already are in schools or should be, and try to rank those in order of what we think is most important.
Oh, I got a long list of should-bes.
Yeah, like rationality, logic, those kinds of overcoming cognitive bias. I think those would be some of the most important courses that are sadly way underrepresented. But anyways,
well, and I think you can do a lot of that and more and get kids a lot more interested in math by teaching coding.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good.
And you learn things like planning, problem-solving abilities, all sorts of stuff.
Absolutely. Yep.
But anyways, thank you for having us on, Shane, and we eagerly wait February, and make sure to subscribe to Hoplu.
Absolutely, and dude, are you doing anything on your YouTube channel? Your YouTube channel, Alex?
Yeah, I've wanted to get started up again, but you know, with having an 8-month-old and you know, working full time, it's
you're chasing a baby all over the place.
It's hard to find the time.
Just because they're on all fours and can't walk doesn't mean they don't move fast.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the other day I dived and grabbed his ankle to keep him from crawling off the bed.
All right, thank you so much, guys, for showing up. Thanks to Daniel for the time he was able to come on in between tech problems. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Thanks to everyone who gave a super chat, of course, as usual. Thanks to all my donors and supporters. And thanks to the viewers as well, because that's the reason for all this. Until next time, stay strong and be free.